Hello there, my name is Paul Martin and I am here to discuss my dissertation. This video will outline the topic I have chose to investigate. It will talk about the progress I have made to date and will also examine the remaining measures I need to take to complete this paper. The title of this dissertation is Managing Construction Projects. This paper will focus on using Scrum to optimize management in construction. The main aims of writing this paper is to advise people on the beneficial use of implementing the Scrum methodology into the construction industry. I will also consider previously used techniques in the industry and give reasons to support my theory that Scrum is a superior method to put into practice. Scrum is an incremental framework used for managing complex projects which repeats a process with aim of approaching a desired goal, target, or result. It is most commonly used with agile software development, but can be used as a general project management approach. The main goal of the Scrum methodology is to identify the highest priority requirements on a consistent basis, and specify which of these tasks needs to be completed to fulfill those requirements. So who is in the Scrum team? Well, it consists of three main players: a product owner, a Scrum development team, and a Scrum master. The product owner is ultimately responsible for what the Scrum team builds. This entails prioritizing the product backlog, making the final call on requirements questions, negotiating with the Scrum development team during the sprint planning meeting, and declaring whether demonstrated items meet their acceptance criteria at the sprint review meeting. Scrum avoids the term product manager because an effective product owner does not manage the team in a conventional boss worker sense. The appropriate level of involvement of the product owner will vary. The absolute minimum would be attendance at the sprint planning meetings, the sprint review meetings, and backlog refinement meetings. If your designated product owner cannot do that much, you may as well admit you don't have a product owner, and perhaps someone else should step up to the role. The Scrum development team is a cross-functional group of about 7 people responsible for producing a potentially shippable product increment in every sprint. They are as self-governed as the organisation can stand and are responsible for the outcome at the sprint review meeting. While Scrum doesn't specify exact team configuration, it recommends that each team contains a combination of skills, including analysis, architecture, development, and quality assurance. Mixing analysis, design, implementation, integration, and test into the hourly workflow blurs the lines between the traditional roles we're accustomed to on waterfall projects. The Scrum Master keeps the process moving, guides the team towards self-organisation, helps resolve impediments for the team, keeps the Scrum artifacts visible, and does whatever else it takes to maximise team productivity and creativity. The master part of the word misleads some. The Scrum Master does all this with no authority. Unlike a traditional project manager, the Scrum Master isn't a task master. The Scrum Master does not make commitments on behalf of his team. The following is a list of terminology associated with Scrum. What is a sprint? A sprint is a time period, typically 1 to 4 weeks, in which development occurs on a set of backlog items that the team has committed to. It is also known as a time box or an iteration. At the beginning of each sprint, a planning meeting is held. Work to be done is selected, and a sprint backlog is prepared, which details the time it will take to do that work with the entire team. They will identify and communicate how much of the work is likely to be done during the current sprint. These meetings have an 8-hour limit. For the first 4 hours, the entire team is present. They will prioritize the product backlog. For the second 4 hours, the development team is only present. They will draw out a plan for the sprint, resulting in a sprint backlog. The product backlog and the sprint backlog serve similar but distinct purposes. The product backlog is primarily managed by your product owner and contains a high-level view of all the work that your team must complete to create the product. The product owner ranks the user stories in the product backlog and provides sufficient detail during the sprint planning meeting so that your team can estimate and implement each user story. In contrast, your team creates the sprint backlog, which contains a detailed list of all the tasks that your team must complete to finish the user stories for the sprint. In the product backlog, your team estimates user stories with the relative unit of story points. In the sprint backlog, your team estimates tasks in hours. The product owner updates the product backlog every week, but your team updates the sprint backlog at least daily. The product owner maintains the same product backlog throughout the project, but your team creates a new sprint backlog for each sprint. The reason I have chose to use Scrum in the construction industry is because of the key role communication and teamwork play with this method. If these two skills are used efficiently and effectively in construction, it will help speed up projects and as a result reduce costs. The most common construction disputes are caused by breaches in communication and expectations. Concentrated effort is necessary to facilitate communications between team members. It is critical that companies establish a clear chain of communication and command for the input and distribution of information. The Scrum method uses communication as a key attribute of its method, and as a result of this, it is extremely effective. Several groups generally make up a construction team, such as the architect and engineer team, the owners and investors, and the contractors. All team members share the common goal of wanting to complete the project, but they may also have conflicting priorities. Owners may want value for money, while the architect and engineers are concerned with the aesthetics and safety. Aligning these interests and completing a project on time and on budget require teamwork from all participants. One of Scrum's goals is to gather all these skilled people and join their attributes to form one team. This can be highly advantageous to a company. Another method commonly used in the construction industry is the waterfall model. Some people class this model as risky as it invites failure. They claim you know less about the project at the start than you will ever know in the future. As I further investigate this method, I intend on comparing the communication and teamwork differences it holds against Scrum. To date, I have had regular meetings with my supervisor, Colin Crine, to discuss the progress I am making. Together we discussed the most appropriate information and recommendations to include in this paper to make it interesting and understandable. I have also carried out an abundance of research and investigation via books in the college library and appropriate journals online. So what have I researched? Well, there are numerous articles available which discuss the beneficial use of Scrum, but very few regarding its role in construction. Jeff Sutherland, the original inventor of the Scrum methodology, has numerous write-ups which I find very appealing. He is very detailed in describing how Scrum works, and in some columns he compares and contrasts the method to other models such as that of waterfall. A combined examination of the methodology and known construction techniques will further aid my understanding of the topic. What remains to be done? Well, I need to grasp a further knowledge of communication and teamwork in the construction industry. I need to back up the Scrum methodology and outline how it is superior to the waterfall model. I need to discuss the numerous similarities between the construction sector and software development industry, and finally, investigate the agile project development already present in the construction field. Thank you for viewing my presentation.